serve as the input of the second system. As for the output of the second system, serve as the input for the last one. Go on, so on, and so forth. I would like to picture this presentation as an illustration of my legal system, including that of Indonesia's. Next. Okay, let's leave our illustrations I presented before, and please have a look at this presentation. As a system, law includes system of rules that are created and enforced through social, governmental, and certainly judicial institutions to regulate behavior. With the behavior of the general, I will refer to the general public or people. So if we talk about the system of the behaviorism and behavioralism, it will be in a very different paradigm. So with behavior, we have them in legal positivism paradigm, while behavioralism belongs to legal realism or post-positivism paradigm. So mind your and in this session. Next, up to this point, now you may have seen law is a system by its own right. However, at the same time, legal system is also part of social system. Having understood law as a social system, different construction of the law firstly affect the legal outcomes. If we talk about the legal system that is part of the social system, this present is taken from the point of view that those who don't believe law as sui generis. So there are people who believe that law is sui generis, but with this kind of presentation taken from the point of view by those who didn't believe law as sui generis. Different constructions of the law firstly affect legal outcomes, and afterwards, legal outcomes or decisions within the legal system controls actual consequences within social reality. This presentation, therefore, briefly describes the interrelationship between law and social reality. So, as an example, I can draw an example. The judge verdict or decision in the court of criminal law will only offer the offender upon the fabric of the society could not be restored. Hence, when you do not consider law as a closed system, it is a social system. From this understanding, we could then arrive at the restorative justice system. So this is an example that legal outcomes or decision within the legal system controls actual consequences within the social reality. Next. Let's go back to our main topic, that is legal system. As you may have realized, there are variations of legal system adopted by individual country. Now, since legal system is historical in nature, any national legal system is therefore unique. This kind of subject matter is commonly explored in the field of comparative law. In postgraduate program, the degree given is Master of Comparative Law, or MCL. Here we can have a notion that either as a system or rules or as a social system, still law is a system. Okay? Okay, dear participants. Next. Please observe the main element of legal system in general. I can mention there is civil law system. There is also common law system. In addition, there is customary law system. And don't forget, there is also religious law system. Last but not least, there is this kind of system representing a melting pot of laws known as a pluralistic system. Next. For your information, let's have a look how they differ to each other. Geographically, civil law is the most widespread, but demographically, common law is the most employed. Cultural-wise, customary law is the most distinctive. This is due to the fact that each social or society or people develop their own culture, which is considered as the base of legal system. But when spiritually in concern, religious law is the most entrant or internalized. And characteristically, pluralistic systems is most varied. Each pluralistic system has its own mixture. Next. Insofar now as the main institution or pillars of legal system are concerned, there are the legislature body that takes care of statutory law, that is also called statute law or written law. And it may be national in nature, or provincial in nature, or in regional level. Executive, meanwhile, deals with regulatory law, written law, at national, provincial, or regional level. As for judiciary, it looks after common law, jurisprudence, or written law, and they are the outcomes of the judiciary processes. And finally is the community or indigenous. It is about customary law and or traditional law, and also local law, because in some region they are revert to local law, and then oral law, or local, they are oral and local in nature, although some can take the form of written law. All in all, they are often referred to as living law. I would like to underline that this presentation depicts the institution of the pillar of legal system, while the last two previous presentations are about legal building block of the legal system. Okay, next. Now, let's return to the legal building block of the system of law, starting with civil law. Civil law derives from the Roman Empire. There is the Corpus Juris Civilis. This law was brought about by the Emperor Justinian on 529 AD. Civil law is constructed by codifications in a constitution or statute passed by legislature, and it is considered forceful. Moreover, civil law enforced and or interpreted rather than developed or made by judges. Next. The example of civil laws are not straightforward. Here we have quite a number of types of civil law. On the first column, we have French civil law and some countries or states that adopt similar types of civil law. There are France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Spain. The second type is in the fourth column, is German civil law. This comprises Germany, Austria, Russia, Bosnia, Russia, Serbia, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. In between, from first column and fourth column in between, we have a hybrid. Between France and Germany, there is a hybrid, Napoleonic, Germanistic civil law, where the French influence is stronger. And this includes Italy, the Netherlands, Argentina, Brazil, and Portugal. The second hybrid is the Germanistic Napoleonic civil law. There is also the hybrid, another hybrid. So here, German influences is larger. This includes Switzerland, Turkey. They are in between of the first and fourth column. Civil law, French civil law, and German civil law. They're hybrid from those of two. All right. The fifth type is Scandinavian civil law. This consists of Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. The last one is civil law, socialist law. That is civil law influenced by socialist law. This type of civil law is exemplified by the People's Republic of China. So here's the example of the civil laws. That is not straightforward. Okay. Next. Common law, as you may have already known, develops in England. It is largely influenced by Anglo-Saxon law and slightly by Norman law. The sources of common law are the decisions in cases by judges. In every legal system, though, there will be a legislature that passes new laws and statutes. It should be noted that the relationship between statutes and judicial decisions can be complex. Although common laws are by no means judge-made laws, still they are needed to be passed and legalized by a legislature. Remind this, okay? Next. Actually, there is no single format of common law. The first one is, of course, United Kingdom and Ireland. The legal system in this region include that of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. In America, particularly Northern America, common law may be found in United States, especially at state level, and also Canada. In the Southern Hemisphere, particularly in South Pacific, common law is adopted by Australia and New Zealand. Africa, meanwhile, has its own form of common law. It may be found in South Africa. And in the Asia continent, common law is observed and applied. In India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Hong Kong. Next. Having gone through civil and common law, I'd like to take you to step into customary law. Customary law may be identified where there is certain legal practice is observed. Customary law describes the contour of activities that can be substantiated within a specific social setting. Based on the principle opinio juris sive, necessities, or an opinion of law or necessity, the related parties then regard it as law. So, customary law is considered to be the living law of the community concerned, and thus is inclined to be local and specific. Actually, local and specific is the main traits of customary law. Okay. Next. Okay, let's proceed with customary law class. In customary law may also be considered to be as many as legal practices that are observed by the communities concerned. As it has been indicated before, customary law is local as well as specific. Customary law is initiated to serve the community in terms of their social welfare. So if we could see the different characteristics of both customary law and customary international law, this presentation depicts that difference or that characteristic, different characteristic for both. Mind you, you may not be aware of customary international law. It may be found on its own overview. So we can see, perhaps it's involving 2 or 3 countries on its own overview. It seems that can also be contributing by another countries. Anyhow, customary law or customary international law may well be characterized by its global and general nature, as well as its focus on human rights. So there's a lot of example on that. You ever been read about the fisheries problem? So you can see they are solved even in the international court by using customary international law. All right. Yes. Next. It's time now to have a broad overview of religious law. Religious law signifies the idea of religious system or document that is employed as a legal foundation. Care should be taken, however, the methodology applied to make the most of such a system or document may well vary, according, of course, to the religion question. Religion's law may bear a resemblance to civil law or even common law. So it's quite similar to civil law or even common law. It may be held as individual or perhaps family ethical guidance, individual ethical guidance or family ethical guidance, or operated as the source of a country's legal system. Now we can have a look. Several prominent examples of religious law that is include Sharia in Islam, Shariah or Sharia in Islam, it is based on both divine law derived from the Quran and Sunnah and the rulings of ulema or jurists. The methods include ijma, means consensus, qiyas, means analogical deduction, ijtihad, research, and urf, or Islamic common practice or law, so as to produce fatwa or legal opinions. The next one is halakha in Judaism. Halakha is followed by Orthodox and conservative Jews. It is observed in both ecclesiastical and civil relations. Then there is canon law in Christianity. It mainly functions as personal righteous direction. Formally, it is applied as the core for national legal system, especially during the Middle Ages. Next. Okay, finally we get to pluralistic legal system. And pluralistic legal system is the existence of multiple legal systems within one human population and our geographic area. This system is particularly prevalent in former colonies. Here, the law of a former colonial authority, maybe civil law or common law, still prevails. Alongside this colonial law are traditional legal systems. There are customary law and all religious law. I would like to underline, certainly to have a comprehensive understanding of what pluralistic legal system is, we first have to completely understand what civil law, common law, customary law, and religious law are. Okay? All right, next. Okay. In Vatican City, pluralistic legal system is a combination of civil law and canon law. This type of pluralistic legal system consists of Roman and Italian civil law combined with Catholic canon law. A mixture of civil law and common law is identified in the Philippines. It comprises Spanish law influenced by US common law. In Egypt, a blend of civil law and Sharia law is observed and applied. This pluralistic legal system is a mixture of Islamic jurisprudence for Muslims, that is family issues, or in the case of family issues, and French civil law system for non-Muslims. A unification of common law and Sharia law is found in Malaysia. It is a blend of English common law and Sharia law for Muslims in the case of family matters. Now, Indonesia. Here you may come across with a jumble of civil law, customary law, and Sharia law all together. It is mainly a fusion of Netherlands civil law, customary law, and Sharia law in the case of family affairs. Okay. Next. After having discussed the main element of legal system, let's now proceed to the other section of the system in Indonesia. In particular, this section is Indonesian governance and its branches, namely legislative branch, executive branch, and judiciary branch. Next. As far as the legal system is concerned, let's focus our discussion in the judiciary branch. In Indonesia, perhaps in many other countries too, the judiciary branch is made up of Court of First Instance, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court on one end. But on the other hand, not too far, there is Constitutional Court. So we call it Supreme Court. Court means pengadilan. It is quite different with the Constitutional Court because with Supreme Court or Constitutional Court, court here means mahkamah in Indonesia. But Court of Appeals and Court of First Instance, the word court means pengadilan. It's quite different, right? But we call it court, both of them. Okay. Okay, starting with the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, or we call it in Indonesia Mahkamah Agung. The Supreme Court has the power of judicial review over regulation lower than the law, i.e., whether such regulation go against particular laws. It is the highest judicial institution and the final court of appeals in Indonesia with regard to criminal, civil, religious, military, and state administrative courts and other special courts established by the law. It has oversight over the Court of Appeals, and Court of First Instance can hear a cassation appeal, or we call it kasasi, can also conduct a case review or re-examination of a case. We call it PK, or peninjauan kembali. If certain requirements are satisfied, and has supreme jurisdiction covering general court and special courts. So they are all about the Supreme Court. That is the highest judicial institution and final court appeals in Indonesia. All right. Now, Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals, meanwhile, consists of first, High Court or Pengadilan Tinggi in Indonesia. It hears appeals from district court. There is one in each province and special region. The next one is Religious High Court or Mahkamah Tinggi Islam or Mahkamah Islam Tinggi. It hears appeals from religious courts. Still another one is Administrative High Court or Pengadilan Tinggi Tata Usaha Negara. There are only 4, one in Jakarta, special region, and the rest are in Eastern Java, Southern Sulawesi, and North Sumatra. So we have only 4 administrative high court. The last one is Military High Court or Pengadilan Militer Tinggi. And we have the one and only military high courts in Jakarta. Okay. Below Court of Appeal, there is Court of First Instance. It includes the Court of First Instance for general jurisdiction, or we call it Peradilan Umum. It's known as the District Court or Pengadilan Negeri. It has the authority to examine, try, and decide both criminal and civil law cases. Within the District Court, there can be specialist courts that hear cases based on the particularity of the area of issue of law, and a specialist court that hears cases based on the age of the actor in a criminal case. Those courts are commercial court or pengadilan niaga, industrial relation dispute court or pengadilan perselisihan hubungan industrial, human rights court or pengadilan hak asasi manusia, and court of crime and corruptions atau pengadilan tindak pidana korupsi. There are also religious court, pengadilan agama, state administrative court, pengadilan tata usaha negara, taxation court, pengadilan perpajakan, fishery court, pengadilan perikanan, military court, pengadilan militer, and juvenile court, or pengadilan anak in Indonesia. That is all about the court of first instance. Next, on this slide, I'd like to pay special attention to components of criminal justice system. We find there are 5 components. First is law enforcement officers. Second is prosecutors. Third, they are defense attorneys. Fourth, the courts themselves. And 5 is a correction institution. So we have 5 components of criminal justice system: law enforcement officers, prosecutors, defense attorneys, courts, and correction institution. Okay. Looking at the Constitutional Court or Mahkamah Konstitusi, it has the power. Constitutional Court or Mahkamah Konstitusi has the power to, among other things, determine constitutionality of law. Here we call it undang-undang. It is not an appellate court because its decision is final and binding, and therefore cannot be challenged. Its power are, first, to review the law made against the Constitution. Second, to resolve disputes between state institutions. Third, to resolve dissolution of political parties. Fourth, to resolve dispute over resolve disputes over election results. And fifth, to rule on president's impeachment. The jurisdiction of the court is only limited to issue of law on whether the president and/or the vice president are guilty in doing the acts prohibited by the Constitution. The decision on whether to remove the president or the vice president is still under the authority of the People Consultative Assembly. So it's not too easy to impeach the president or the vice president here we have in Indonesia. Okay. All right. Now, I'd like to show you the hierarchy of Indonesian legislation. On the very top, there is the 1945 Constitution, or we call it Undang-Undang Dasar 45, 1945, or with abbreviation UUD 45, and of course, including its amendment. Underneath the Constitution is resolutions of the People's Representative Council, or we call it Ketetapan Majelis Permusyawaratan Rakyat, or TAP MPR. It is then followed by Acts or Undang-Undang or UU, also translated as laws, undang-undang X, and government regulation in lieu of X. We call it Perpu, peraturan pemerintah pengganti undang-undang. Afterwards, there is government regulation or pemerintah, peraturan pemerintah, PP, peraturan pemerintah. Below this, there is presidential regulation or peraturan presiden or Perpres. And lastly, at the bottom, there is regional regulation. That is peraturan daerah or Perda. Nevertheless, in practice, on the part of the government, the hierarchy will include, in practice, presidential decree, keputusan presiden or kepres, followed by presidential instruction, instruksi presiden or impres, and then ministerial regulation, peraturan menteri or permen. Below this is the ministerial decree or keputusan menteri or kepmen. And lastly is circulation letters or surat edaran. So, okay, class, that is all that I could broadly bring forward to you about legal system, particularly the Indonesian case. Hopefully, it could shed some light and contribute to your understanding on this matter. Now, I will let the moderator to take over the discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Prof. and Lynn, on your insightful presentation. It's going to enrich our academic quality this morning. Actually, there are several responses from our participants and then several questions. The first is from Nick from Queen Mary University. The question from Nick is actually when we talk about international system, whether it can intervene the state system and then how it can change system or legal system in particular country. That's the first. And the second is when we talk, for example, in European Union, there is international law in which finally intervene the state legal system, for example, in taxation, in the trade, and the system itself, then there is too much intervention, for example, from European Union. After that, the British government decided to move from European Union. What's your responses over those questions? Please, Professor Elwin.
Sorry, can you repeat the first one question?
Okay, the first question is, how big is the intervention of international law to the state law, whether international law can change national legal system, for example, or particular legal system? Please.
Oh, okay. All right, that's a good question. So if we talk the influence of the international law to the state law, actually, we can say that is they have their influence very much actually, but to put them into or to include them to the state law, I mean a certain state law, then it's not that easy because we have to ratify it first, that kind of international law, and then we bring it back to the state or the country, and then they still need to, what do you call it, to discuss or to proceed to the legislature that they have, and then they will decide whether or not that international law could influence their state law. So it's not easy. They need a kind of agreement inside of the state, and then meet a special law or acts to promulgate it that they accept that international law, and they were called ratified. They need to ratify that international law to be applied to their own countries. That's for the first question. And the second is about, can you just pinpoint?
Actually, the second question is, does the international possible to bring change of legal system of the domestic law? Because in the case of Britain, we choose to leave the European Union since they feel that the EU law going too far in the domestic law.
All right. So in the same way, I can explain about the influence of the, in this case, European Union law to the instead of in certain country. Again, we still need what do we call it, ratification of that country, so as to that we agreed here in our country to adopt their regulation. But well, very often the country that the international will will apply to is sometimes very often feel that it's kind of colonization through the law. So very often the strong discussion in their countries also happen. So there is always tug of war between those who reluctant to adopt the law or those who agree to adopt the law. So it's a kind of a tug of war that's not that easy to resolve, but still I believe there should be a discussion or agreement or ratification through their legislature in their country. Something like that.
Thank you very much for your clear and very insightful answer, Mrs. Professor. The second question comes from Shazwan. This is the student of Universitas Kebangsaan Malaysia. His question is, like Malaysia, appeals in courts are only allowed 3 times, for example, as if from the session court until the federal courts. And my question or his question is, does the judicial system in Indonesia also have this kind of limitation for appealing a case? What's your...
Oh yes, we do have it. So appealing of the cases in the court will only allow just once for the first court, and we call it banding, but we still have another appeal on the high court. It's also once, and the last we have just once or two perhaps in the the Supreme Court. We call it kasasi. It was our agreement that it is final. It is final frontier to appeal the cases in our court system. And after that, we still have, we call it peninjauan kembali, that only can be done if you have a very new, evidence. If it is not, then it will be refused by the court. And also we can have at the top a gratification of the president. But we do have limit times or limit appeal in our court system, just like in Malaysia. Okay.
Thank you very much for your answer, Mrs. Professor. It means that we also have the limitations for submitting the appeal.
Yeah.
Yes. Mrs. Professor, there are 2 other questions. Another question is from Kelly. It's from University of Canberra. May I ask you about, in Australia, we don't have a president, so I'm not knowledgeable on presidential system. I wanted to know, to what extent does your president play a role in the legal system? So actually the question is about the role of the president in our legal system.
Can you just repeat again? So your voice is not that good for me, so please repeat, especially for the last one.
Actually,
last part.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Actually, the question from Kelly is about, in Australia, there is no president, only have prime minister. So she asked you about what's the role of president in our legal system. Yes.
All right. And then?
Only that question.
Okay.
She want to know about that.
Yes, I acknowledge and I realize that where we have a different system between here in Indonesia and Australia. You have your prime minister. I know that exactly, but we do have here a presidential system. So if you ask me about the president's roles in our legislation, then I can say that the president will put their agreement through their signature after the legislation has been processed by our legislative institutions. So if they have already reached the consensus, then it will signed by both president and our legislative institution, and then it will promulgate it in our what do you call it? What do you call it in English, Afif? Lembaran negara. What do you call it in English?
It's like the promulgation that
Yeah, it's
we
promulgation for
can
all the
explain
people
that.
here in Indonesia. That's mean that after that promulgation, our lembaran negara signed the
Yes.
president and the legislative institution. That's mean that all Indonesian citizen has to be obeyed to that law. So there is no exemption. So that law means applied for those people in Indonesia. Okay, that's a role of the president. He will give their signature. It is signified that they agree with the, legislative decision on the process of legislation. Okay,
Okay.
so you want to edit this, Aviv? Perhaps you can elaborate more.
Yes. Actually, there is another question, Mrs. Professor. May I ask about it from Dennis? You can. Yes. Dennis asked you, Mrs. Professor, position of constitutional court in terms of hierarchy, because whether it's higher from Supreme Court or in Indonesia, or maybe it's separated one another.
You pinpoint again?
Okay.
So your voice is quite far, far away, like you are talking in German, so I can't hear you clearly.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll repeat it again, whether you can hear me right now, Mrs. Professor.
Don't talk too close to your microphone, so yeah, I think it's yeah, clearly. Okay, again.
Okay. There is another question from Dennis. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all right.
Yes. Actually, Dennis from Universitas Kebangsaan Malaysia, Prof. And then actually he asked you about the position of constitutional court in the hierarchy, whether our constitutional court, how is about the hierarchy, whether it's under Supreme Court or maybe it's separated one another.
Oh yes, it is about constitutional court, if I'm not mistaken. It is.
Yes,
right?
that's.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. With constitutional court, it is belongs to or under the supervision of the Supreme Court, of course. All of course here in Indonesia, but it's different duty and different tasks, of course. And what is very important to take into account is that the decision of the constitutional court is cannot be challenged. So there will be no appeal or something or cassation or everything, because the decision is final and binding. But it is under the supervision of the Supreme Court. So it is included the constitutional court with other courts here in Indonesia. Okay. Am I right, Afif?
Yes, Prof. I also want to pinpoint. The answer is actually it's in the same level, but it's separated one another. So it's not in hierarchy position. Yes. That's all the question that we have over here. This is Professor on the chat. Yes. Okay. At the end of this session, I'd like to make several conclusions related to your lecture today. Actually, when we talk about legal system in Indonesia, Professor Elin Indarti emphasized in her lecture that legal system is part of the social system, so that in nature, every legal system is unique. So there are 5 legal systems, namely civil law, common law, religious law, customary law, which is very local and specific, but also there is international customary law, in which, and then there is pluralistic legal system. Where is in Indonesia about? Indonesia in pluralistic legal system, in which the existence of multiple legal system within one population or geographic area. So I think it's very nice presentation, very insightful presentation, and very clear about our legal system, about Indonesian legal system. We would like to say thank you very much for all of your participation. Thank you very much for Professor Elin Indarti for bringing a very good material today. It's very enhancing our academic quality. And I think that's very, very extraordinary. I think that's all. And then I return the times and also the chance for Mr. Daniel. I return it to the host of this lecture. Please, Mr.
Can I say something? Can I say something, Avi?
Oh, yes, there is the closing remark.
Yes,
yes. Oh, I'm so sorry for
yeah. I would like to say thank you for all participants of your great attention, and hopefully it will be fruitful for all of you and for all of us. And I will see you again next time. Goodbye. All right.
Okay.
Back to you, Daniel.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Elin. Please, Mr. Daniel, I return it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Erlin and Dr. Afif, for the time-limited presentation and discussion of the Indonesian legal system in its entirety. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, before we end the session, we would like to hold a brief photo session with the lecturer. So please turn on your cameras and take position.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Afif, too.
Thank you, Prof. Erlin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we're about to take the picture.
Please don't move from this. Please don't.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's take the picture. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, participants. Thank you, Prof. Erlin and Dr. Afif. That will be the end of this morning's session. See you in the next session after the lunch break. Thank you.
See you, all of you. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.